I'm going to talk about the conditions under which the market works or does not work. And first of all, what we have to do is define what we mean by the market works. And when we say the market works, most people think about it as a moral thing. So the meaning here, we have to distinguish between the moral sense that the market works or does not work. And some people say, okay, the market creates big inequalities, so it does not work. And that's true. I mean, that's a moral judgment, and you can say that market does not work because of that. But you have to distinguish between that and the more technical sense in which the market does not work. And that's usually what we talk about in economics. There's a technical failure. So, for example, in the market, you will produce a certain amount of a good, X1, to a certain price, price 1, and this will create a certain happiness, a level of happiness among people who will satisfy some preferences, utility. Now, in a technical sense, the market does not work if the amount of goods produced to certain prices is such that it is possible to actually produce more without making someone else worse off. Okay, that's the technical sense. The market fails when it's possible to make someone else better off without making someone else worse off. And that's a very different thing from a moral failure. You can have big inequalities, but it's still impossible to make someone else better off without making someone else worse off. So in a technical sense, it works. And that's what we're talking about. What do we have to assume for that to be true? Well, for that to be true, you have to make some assumptions here now. Conditions for the market work, assumptions. First of all, we have to assume that we have perfect competition. What do I mean by that? We can't have monopolies, because a monopoly will actually charge a high price and will not produce the right amount of goods. They'll produce not enough goods at a high price. So you could have a better result by having perfect competition that will drive down the prices, and consumers will be more happy. They will pay less and get more. So you need perfect competition. The second thing is you can't have, you should have no externalities. And by no externalities, I mean everything, all the consequences should be reflected in the price of a good. Because if it's not, then you will consume too much or not enough. So for example, when I produce a car, and if I pollute, and the cost of pollution is not included in the price of the car, we will have too many cars compared to what is socially optimal. So pollution is an example of something that is a negative externality, and in this case the market will fail because the price does not reflect the true cost. But you get a positive externalities as well. For example, vaccinations. When I consider whether to get vaccinated or not, I consider the consequences for me. But in fact, a vaccination will have positive consequences for a lot of other people because I will not give them a disease if I'm vaccinated. So, in the case of vaccinations, the market will not provide enough vaccination because of this. The price will be too high compared to what is socially optimal. The third condition for the market to work would be no public goods. No public goods. What do I mean by that? Well, some goods are such that they cannot be excluded once they're produced. So it used to be the case that TV signals, for example, once you produce a TV signal, everyone could take and watch television. And also, my consumption of the TV signal did not prevent or exclude or use up the TV signal. You could use it as well. It's not the same as Coke. If I drink the Coke, you can't drink the same kind of Coke. But with TV signals, it's not a problem. The private sector will not produce those kind of things. Like another example is national defense. Because they can't charge people for that, because it's so easy to get it without paying. Because once it's produced, you don't have to pay, you can just take it. So no one will actually start producing that. The fourth condition would be perfect information. Why? Well, let's use an example from the healthcare sector again. If your dentist knows more than you, and I hope he does, about how to treat teeth. Then you go there and the dentist will say, oh, you need to do this. And you say, well, you're the dentist, you're the expert here. I will do that. He knows more than you. That creates an incentive or a problem because he can say, oh, you need this because he's greedy. And you will just say yes. So you provide too many services in order to earn money. So you have informational asymmetries that actually messes up markets in many ways. And this is just one example. Okay, there are also many other conditions, but let's just stick to those 4. What can you do in order to correct the market failures? Well, you have lots of different interventions, and I'm not saying that all of them are good. You have to consider whether the intervention itself is worse than the market failure. But let's say, what kind of interventions do we have? So let's just list a few interventions. You could tax. So for example, when it comes to pollution here, with externalities, you could put a tax on pollution. You can regulate. You can say you're not allowed to put this chemical into the soil or something. You create laws. You can in the case of public goods, for example, you can say, I'm going to provide this public good. The government is actually going to produce and provide defense. But you don't have to actually provide it, government provision, but you could actually instead just finance it. You can make the private sector actually do it, and you're just going to pay for it. That's a possibility as well. When it comes to the more moral failures, you can again use the tax system, and you can have transfers, income transfers, transfer income. And you could do this in kind, or you could do this in cash style. And lots of ways you can intervene. Then you have to discuss the costs and benefits of doing those interventions compared to the costs of having the market failure in itself. But you should know, first of all, that you have to be able to distinguish between the moral failures and the technical failures, and you have to be able to say something about the different kinds of assumptions that are necessary before the market actually will work in a technical sense, and then you have to be able to say something about the different kind of interventions that are possible. That's it.